Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back, welcome back to the channel. I hope you are doing extremely well this evening, and I hope that you're extremely excited for Halloween, which is coming up on Monday. Please let me know in the comments below what your plans are for Halloween. Are you going to wear a costume, and what does your costume look like? I'm really excited to read all of it. Now, I myself, I usually just stay at home and watch a horror film, so that's probably what I'll end up doing. But then again, Halloween is not such a huge tradition over here. Now, for tonight's video, I've got some scary stories for you that will remind you to check your Halloween trick-or-treat candy. I mean, you're getting it from strangers after all, and it could potentially be tampered with. With that being said though, and of course without any further ado, let's get into tonight's Halloween stories, shall we? Alrighty. I would like to tell you a thing or two about a man named Ronald Clark O'Brien. Have you heard of him? Now, Ronald Clark O'Brien was born on October 19th in 1944. Now, he lived in Deer Park, Texas with his wife, Deneen. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this. He had two children with her, a boy named Timothy, born in 1966, and a girl named Elizabeth, born in 1969. Now, Ronald was just like an average middle-class, boring guy, really. Like, he had a normal job, he was an optician, he was doing quite well for himself. He was a religious man because he was a deacon for the Second Baptist Church, and he was also in charge of the local bus program, so really like a community man, a good, decent, religious, community-spirited man, our Ronald. Now, fast forward to 1974. Ronald's kids are now 8 and 5. Timothy, the boy, is 8. Elizabeth, the girl, is 5. Now, it's Halloween night, so naturally there's some trick-or-treating involved, especially with young children. I mean, it's just fun. They get candy. I mean, best night of the year, right? Apart from Christmas, maybe. But anyways, Ronald decides to go trick-or-treating with his kids. At this point, he's still wearing his optician's coat because he had just returned from work and they had eaten and stuff, and he hadn't had a chance to put like an actual costume on. So he goes with his two kids, but also with his neighbour Jim Bates and his kids. Well, I guess it depends on the source. Like, some sources say it was one of Jim Bates's kids, others say it was both of his kids. So I'm gonna stick with both. You'll see why later. So they go trick-or-treating. They haven't been going at it very long, and they ring the doorbell of this house, right? And nobody opens the door. So the group decides to carry on So the group agrees and they're like, okay, fine, Ronald, you can stay there, you can wait for a little bit, and we are going to carry on to the next house, right? But it doesn't take Ronald very long to catch up with them, so he comes running after them and he's holding 5 Pixy Stix in his hand. Now, for people who don't live in America, I also didn't know what it was, so I had to Google it. A Pixy Stick is basically like sherbet, like a straw that's closed on the ends, and it has like a flavoured sugar kind of substance in it. So Ronald is holding up these Pixy Stix and he's saying, like, you know, the person whose house it was home. They just took their time to answer the door. So he gave a Pixy Stix to each of the children, and then he had one left, and allegedly he gave that to a random kid who wasn't part of the group, who just happened to be around. So they carry on trick-or-treating, but not long after that, their trick-or-treating was cut short because it started to rain, and at that point they had only really done like 2 streets. So Ronald returns home with Timothy and Elizabeth, and Jim Bates takes his kids to his house. So obviously when they get home, Timothy and Elizabeth, they empty their bags of treats onto the table and they're looking at all the nice candy they got. And Timothy asks his dad if he could eat some candy before bed. Now, he was allowed to do this, and his treat of choice was the Pixy Stix. Now, the powder that is in these sticks is usually very loose and you can just pour it into your mouth, but when Timothy opened his, he had trouble pouring the powder out, like it just wasn't happening, it was stuck. So Ronald, he's a very nice dad. Ronald, he grabs the Pixy Stix off of Timothy and he rolls it like this between the palms of his hands to loosen it, right? And then he hands it back to Timothy. So Timothy is eating his Pixy Stix and then he starts complaining that it's, you know, tasting weird. It's a bit bitter, like it's off tasting. Ronald apparently wasn't alarmed by this at all. Like, he didn't say, don't eat that. He got some Kool-Aid and he gave it to Timothy to wash away the bitterness. What the fuck? Like, can you imagine your kid complaining that this nasty Pixy Stix that was already all like clumped together, you had to roll it between the palms of your hands to loosen it up, and then your kid starts complaining that it tastes off and bitter? Like, can you imagine that you then would grab Kool-Aid for the bitterness to like be washed away? Suspicious to say the least, right? So soon after, and probably very unsurprisingly, Timothy starts having stomach pains. So naturally he runs to the bathroom. Now when he reached the bathroom, he starts vomiting and convulsing, right? Now Ronald obviously went there to help him, and Timothy literally went limp in his father's arms and he died on the way to the hospital. So that is extremely tragic. Now, obviously when an 8-year-old dies, they're gonna do an autopsy and a pathology report, because that's not normal. So this pathology report revealed that the Pixy Stix that Timothy had eaten had been laced with potassium cyanide. The police also saw, and how nobody else noticed this is beyond me, police also saw that the wrapper had been opened and tampered with, and then it had been stapled shut. So there was literally a staple in the Pixy Stix, and nobody thought that looked suspicious. Like Jim or the parent from Random Kid, like a literal staple in the Pixy Stix. That is wild, man. That is wild. Can you imagine that your kid comes home with some shady Pixy Stix with a staple in it, and then you open it and it's all crusty as fuck, and you have to roll it between the palms of your hands to loosen it up? That would be an absolute nope from me. Now, luckily, well, I say luckily, but yeah, unfortunately, Timothy had eaten his Pixy Stix, but luckily, the other 4 kids hadn't. So the police recovered the other 4 Pixy Stix quite quickly. Now, when they looked at them, they discovered that the top 2 inches were absolutely packed with a double lethal dose of cyanide, basically. Double lethal dose. It was enough to kill 2 adults. In fact, even just what Timothy had consumed was enough to kill 2 adults. We don't know whether he actually ingested all of the cyanide that was in that Pixy Stix. It is wild. So, obviously, after this incident, the community is worried and everyone is bringing in their Halloween candy to the police so they could check it for poison and stuff. Now, the initial theory from the police was that some random guy had probably been handing out poisoned candy to kill as many children as possible. Like, strange, right? Because if you wanted a kid, why would you only do it one night a year? That's a bit odd, right? So it didn't take very long for suspicion to fall upon Ronald, right? So the first thing that was kind of shady to the police was that Ronald had forgotten which house it was that he had gotten the Pixy Stix from, even though they only did 2 streets, right? And he even stayed there longer to wait for somebody to open the door. So very, very strange. Then suddenly he remembered, oh yeah, it must have been that one. But then he said he never saw the person who opened the door. He only saw his arm, and he described it as, quote, hairy. A hairy arm gave him the Pixy Stix. Weird story, Ronald. Very, very weird story. Now, the police discovered that none of the houses that they had visited, none of the houses on these 2 streets were actually handing out Pixy Stix that night. None of them. And then, like I said, they figured out which house it was, so naturally they contacted the owner of the house. But that guy had a super solid alibi. He hadn't even been home until 11 p.m. that night because he's a shift worker and he works as a supervisor at Hobby Airport, and he had over 200 people who could vouch for him, so I would say that is a pretty solid alibi. So there actually wasn't anyone home in that house. Now, that was a very, very bad choice. O'Brien, Ronald, Clark, O'Brien. Very, very bad choice. Now, they naturally investigated Ronald further and they discovered that he was $100,000 in debt. He had even sold his family home and he was still $100,000 in debt. ask why he also gave Jim Bates' kids these Pixy Stix and also that random kid, right? Why would he do that if he just wanted to collect the insurance money from his own kids? Well, he did that to make it look like some child-hating neighbour was doing this with the sole purpose of killing as many children as possible, and it almost worked. It almost worked, but he didn't cover his tracks very well. So he was arrested on November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. That's when Ronald got arrested. Now, throughout the trial, he maintained his innocence. He said, I didn't do this. It was some scary, creepy, crazy-ass neighbour who wanted to kill my children and Jim's children and that other random kid. But the evidence was just too overwhelming. Like I said, Ronald didn't cover his tracks very well. He wasn't very good at that. Only a few months before this happened, in the summer of 74, Ronald had phoned up a friend of his who works in the chemical industry, and he asked him about cyanide. Where can I purchase cyanide? Just out of curiosity. What is the lethal dosage for cyanide? What is enough to kill an adult? Just out of pure curiosity. Now, it also turns out that just before Halloween, Ronald went to a Houston chemical outlet to buy some cyanide, but he left without purchasing some because he learned that the smallest amount that he could purchase at that moment was 5 pounds. And see, that's a bit too much. That doesn't quite fit into 5 Pixy Stix, you see. And then what would he do with the rest, right? It's just evidence lying around. So he weren't going to do that. Now, during his trial, his defense basically solely relied on the urban legend of a stranger handing out candy, like Halloween candy laced with deadly materials, which has been going around for decades, right? But sometimes it's true. So, is it really an urban legend? I mean, now on June 3rd, 1975, Ronald was found guilty and sentenced to death for filicide. The jury, and rightfully so, took less than 1 hour to convict him, because obviously the evidence was just overwhelming, right? He really didn't cover his tracks very well. And then shortly after the verdict, his wife divorced him. Like, obviously. Like, of course she's gonna divorce him. Like, he literally killed one of their kids and tried to kill the other. And then 3 random kids as well. Now, when he was in prison, on death row, his fellow inmates despised him because obviously he had killed a child, and they don't take kindly to child killers in prison, as we know. Now on March 31st, 1984, that's still like a long time that went by, like 9 years, he was finally executed by lethal injection, but he still maintained his innocence. Now, when he got executed, a crowd of demonstrators gathered outside, and they were even mockingly shouting "trick or treat" as Ronald was getting executed. So, I mean, he kind of deserved that one. Wow. This is just wild, man. Like, the lengths that some people will go to for some money, killing your own children, your own flesh and blood, for some money, for $60,000, both your kids, really. I mean, that is why even have for some parents, but for whatever reason they can't have kids. And then people like bloody Ronald, Clark, O'Brien get to put kids into the world just willy-nilly and then off them for $60,000. That's mental. That is mental. Now, in the media, they're always quick to call tampering with Halloween candy a hoax. But actually, like every single Halloween, there are multiple reports of candy that is being tampered with, that's either being laced with lethal substances or, like nails and needles and razors and thumbtacks are being found in them. Like, it's actually mental. But, yeah, the media are always very quick to call this a hoax. But in 2018, in Marshfield, Massachusetts, there were little sewing needles found in Halloween candy. Now, this candy with the needles in it was discovered in the trick-or-treating stash of a 3-year-old boy. And this 3-year-old boy's father just happened to be a police officer, so this is true, basically. Now, Jim Keating and Carol Keating were the boy's grandparents, and they discovered multiple tiny, small sewing needles in 2 packets of Twizzlers Twists. Now, they also inspected the packaging, but they couldn't see like a puncture hole or anything. But then again, they said that the needles were so tiny that they're not certain if they would have even seen the puncture hole. Also, they're probably old people, like they were the grandparents, so maybe their eyesight isn't 20/20 anymore. So the police then launched an investigation. I mean, the boy's dad's a police officer, so of course. They even contacted the Hershey Co., who make the Twizzlers Twists, to ask about it, to see whether maybe that could have happened during the manufacturing process. But honestly, that would kind of worry me if that can happen during a manufacturing process. Like, that is dangerous, man. So they contacted them and they reacted, saying that they use metal detectors to screen for any potential metal objects in their products before they go out to the shops. So it can't have been a mistake on their end. I mean, my faith in Hershey's is restored, but that obviously means that somebody deliberately put those needles in those Twizzlers Twists. Now, meanwhile, the same year, same time, in Oak Bluffs, Massachusetts, so not far away, there was also a Hershey's candy bar found with an actual nail in it, like an inch-long nail, or like a 2-inch-long nail. So that was a little less inconspicuous because it was actually visible without even taking the wrapper off of the candy bar. Like, it literally poked out. So I don't know what the deal was with that one, but police actually never found out who did it. Can you imagine? You know what that reminds me of, and that's kind of an issue over here. It reminds me of people hiding meatballs with poison, like with rat poison in them, between like shrubbery, on walks in nature reserves, so that random dogs would find it and eat it. Like, what kind of person do you have to be to firstly hate dogs, because dogs are amazing, right? To hate dogs, but to hate them enough that you go out of your way to go to the shop and purchase a pack of rat poison. You then purchase some nice ground beef, and then you're in your kitchen rolling poison meatballs like this, and then cooking them. You cook them and then you spread them around. So random dog or a random child. Like, literally two of the most innocent things on the planet. What have they ever done to you, man? What the heck? Now, luckily with this Halloween candy, there is a lot of reports, but there aren't actually any cases of children dying or getting seriously injured from, like, Halloween candy that's been tampered with, apart from the really unfortunate case of Timothy. So that's something at least. But you guys, seriously, check that Halloween candy this year, okay? If you have received a Hershey's bar and you can see the head of a nail poking out of the packaging, then maybe don't eat it. Don't sink your teeth into it. Bring it to the police. Alrighty. Those were tonight's stories. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you have a